Thank you for tuning into the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. I'm your fervent feminist host, Raven O'Neill, and I get the honors of sitting down with women experts from all walks of life to discuss the ideas, opportunities, and the strategies that women can take advantage of to get ahead in our patriarchal society. So, if one of your love languages is learning how to hack patriarchal systems and structures, I invite you to join us and help move the needle. I'm so excited to have Rachel Serwetz, founder of WOKEN, joining me today. Rachel began her career at Goldman Sachs and Bridgewater Associates, delving into operations and HR. Following her tenure in corporate America, she pursued coaching, earning certification through the International Coach Federation, and furthering her education with a Technology MBA from NYU Stern. Rachel's expertise extends to her role as an Adjunct Professor of Entrepreneurship at Binghamton University. Rachel's passion for guiding professionals in their career journey led her to establish WOKEN, a company dedicated to career exploration. Over the past 4.5 years, WOKEN has evolved into an online career exploration platform offering coaching sessions, a digital career platform, and unique features like texting and emailing with a coach, group coaching, and co-working. Again, I am so excited to have her joining us, so please join me in extending her a warm welcome. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into this conversation. We're going to talk about one of my favorite things, branding, and especially branding in the professional setting as it relates to your professional profile, your online presence, and how all of that affects your career and your job search. If you're ready, we can just dive right on in.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to start out with LinkedIn is the go-to today for that whole professional presence, building your professional brand. So how would you say it is different from others? How important is it? Am I wrong that it's the go-to? What does that whole thing look like?
Yeah. So I always say LinkedIn these days almost more important than the resume. Resume, it's there and it is a critical traditional component of things, but your LinkedIn is that living and breathing document. It's public facing, it's digital, so anyone can see it at any time, right? The resume, you'll send it if and when it's time. And so that's your presence. It's your digital, your brand, right? And of course, you can always have other branding things like a website or whatever it may be. But LinkedIn, there's so much to it, right? So you have your profile. You can also post and be an active voice and build that thought leadership and things that you want to share or converse about. But of course, your profile is a really go-to place to learn about who is this person? And I think sometimes people forget that it's more of an art than a science to actually figure out, what do you want to say? How do you want to represent? Your brand is really your choice. And if you're making a change or a pivot, you can represent what you want that aligns with your goals and your interests. And maybe there's something you did in your past that you want to leave behind and you don't even have to showcase it. So there's a lot of choice and strategy because you really decide what to say, what to bring to the surface. How should someone perceive who you are as a person, as a professional? And there's a lot that we can work with on LinkedIn to showcase what you want to showcase. That's the art of why branding is such an important topic, because there is time and effort and strategy that you can put into it versus here's who I am and that's it. There's massaging that you could do to make your profile look or sound a certain way. Of course, it should be truthful, but you can tailor your brand the way that you want to be seen, right?
Yeah, and branding is imperative in today's industry. I see so many conversations on LinkedIn actually right now about what recruiters are looking at on there and what you need to have. But before we dive into that, I wanted to ease into the question of building that online presence. Is it easier for men? Is it not? What does that look like? What might be so different that makes it easier? All the nuances around men and women and their online brands.
Yeah, this is anecdotally based on my experience. I think we all heard the statistic about job search and how women will only apply to things that they fit 100%. So we all know that statistic. And that's more of, when do we put ourselves out there? Are we a fit or not? Should we go for it? Could we learn on the job? Could somebody see my capabilities and potential versus what it is that I know how to do already or what I've done in the past? There have been times where I've seen male professionals worry about what to present. So I've seen it on both sides. I do see men that feel perhaps simpler about being able to confidently expand on their skills. But I've seen it on both sides that people are unsure sometimes how to talk about themselves. And I think that's why we have resume editors, we have people to help you with your LinkedIn, because I think it's hard for us to figure out how to talk about ourselves sometimes. What I would just keep in mind is getting that other pair of eyes, whether you get a mentor, a peer, a coach, somebody, because when we get stuck in our own head, we can just spiral. There's so many different ways to say the same thing. And having a support system is one of the best ways to try to get to the point of, okay, this profile feels strong, it's clear, it's representing my strengths, it shows my background, my strengths, my direction, and having somebody there can really help you get to the point of, okay, I think it's good enough for right now. And then periodically, you can come back to it once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever cadence you want. But I think the difficulty is when you're in the moment of editing and it's just this constant, never-ending editing process. So that's where I would just make sure we try to get out of our own head and have some external party to say, oh, here's how this sounds. What did you mean by this phrase? When you have someone else listening or reading the page, that's really where you can get the form of support. Or if you're nervous and you're not sure how to be confident, you're not sure how to show your skills, whether it's the mindset and the hesitation or just the phrasing of things, getting another person there to help you is probably one of the best ways to overcome any of those common hesitations that we have. And so many people have that across both genders. So it depends on the person. I think our personality, right? Are we shy? Are we confident? Do we have that imposter feelings? A lot of people can feel those very common feelings. There is a way to make it appropriate and reasonable and still confident. There's that happy medium that's going to feel comfortable and effective to show who you are as a professional. So that's the goal. It's just a matter of what form of support is going to get you there without you feeling like turmoil and stress to get there.
And I love it. You touched on so many points that I want to dive into, but I want to, again, I feel like I'm going backwards today. I'm just backing up everything, building that presence and getting that support and figuring out your voice and your brand and all of that. How would you advise, let's say, hypothetical, I don't have a LinkedIn presence. I'm just getting started. How would you advise me on getting that off the ground initially? Yeah. And let's remove the whole support, because I absolutely do think you should have someone look at it and have the support of building it, just resume writing if that's not your forte. But I'm starting from scratch. I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah. If you're just getting started from scratch, it does a decent job to prompt you through some of the next steps. And so getting started with the basics. Your name, maybe you upload a picture, and it doesn't have to be a corporate headshot. It's any nice picture of your face. You're smiling, you're looking at the camera. It's pretty zoomed in anyway. So as long as there's not some crazy background, but it's okay if it's a casual photo, as long as it's clear and we could see your face. And then the basics, your past role titles, organizations, and dates, right? That's something you would have on a resume. So you can go keep it consistent with which experiences did you highlight on the resume. Just bring those over. You don't even have to worry about the description just yet. Or if you wanted to keep it simple, you could copy and paste the bullets from your resume. There's other ways of optimizing how you talk about it. But for now, you can take what you have, or you can leave out the description entirely and just put role, org name, dates. It asks education. It asks some skills, right? So I would go through the prompts of the basic elements of the profile and see what you can fill out and just get started with the bare minimum. And even if you have to hit skip on a few things, let it get to the point where you publish your profile and then you have the basics. The beauty is they have this little add a profile section button. So you can always go back and say, what am I missing? Should I add a project? Should I add my volunteering experience? Is there anything I was missing that I want to go back and expand on? And that's always there for you. So they always show you the options for those sections, and you can always come back and do a little bit at a time. The other thing is building up your connections. If you go to my network, it actually will say people you may know. And like all good technology these days, it has a good way of knowing who you may know. So you can follow those prompts and build up. You don't have to connect with strangers just yet. It's personally and professionally. Who do you know in your life? You can connect with those people and form a LinkedIn connection. That's going to give you the ability later to see who you know and who they know and get some introductions. The other thing is your news feed. So you can start to follow some companies or people or leaders. So say you follow a news account or some sort of industry page, or if there's anything you're interested in, you can go follow those things like you would on any other news site or social media site if you were building up your preferences, let's say. So whatever your professional interests are, you can go find some of those folks to follow. There's groups you can join, or just building up your news feed. Those are some very basic things. There's more to LinkedIn. Again, follow some of those prompts, get to the point where your page is published and saved, and then you can always go back and beef it up and enhance it and optimize it. But you want to just have a profile, because the beauty is, even if your profile isn't beefed up, you can look at some other things. You can learn a lot. You can join events. There's so much you can do to gain knowledge or build a connection or message someone. There's so much you can do, even without building up your own presence. And of course, if and when you're ready, there's more you can do on that side too. But just having a bare minimum profile allows you to use the tool.
Mm-hmm. All right. And since we are talking all things branding, let's dive into that next up level, especially as it relates to career, either career change, career growth, any of that, maybe giving us some insight into what leveling it up might look like, and also what to focus on based on what recruiters are looking at. I'll use myself as a perfect example. I've leaned into the fact that I tend to be pretty edgy. My profile is a little bit on the edgier side, but I'm also like not deep in a search for career growth. So I've leaned into that as my personal brand, and that's probably acceptable. But maybe from a recruiter standpoint, what are hard no's and what are absolutes must have, breaking it down from that side.
Yeah. The absolute no's would be probably anything we could talk about in terms of typical absolute no's. If you were to think about what are the things you're going to avoid saying on an interview or on the job, I think it's the same rule of thumb with the professional sense. But I think it's good to be authentic and specific in who you are. I do think the common pitfall is people can use generic language. We're all good problem solvers and good communicators. So let us get to know you. And if your profile is a little edgy because it's specific and unique and authentic to you, at least we're getting to know you. And that's great, because then you can read that page and really feel like you got good information versus the things we all say. And so again, working with somebody can help you. Sometimes it's just self-awareness and reflection of who are you as a professional. Sometimes we just have to clarify and explore and figure out who we are, what we want, and then we can reflect that on a profile. So that's one thing to consider. In terms of what recruiters want to see and just optimizing the page, taking it to the next level. So the headline, right? So right under your name, you want to use the full character count there to write the keywords, the job titles, the skills. What are the top most relevant words to the roles that fit with you? And it's one thing how that reads and looks and sounds, but really it's also for the algorithm so that when a recruiter is searching for talent, you will come up in the right searches. So think about your headline. The about section is a great summary space. People sometimes struggle with that, but again, get support through that. I like to just do background, strengths, direction. Quick, concise, powerful. Who are you? Quickly, right? That's one thing you can do in the about section. In the experience section, there's previous role titles that you have. What's interesting about the role title field is you can write the given title that you had, but in parentheses after that, give us 1 or 2 or 3 keywords of the bulk of what you were doing in that role. Again, keywords that relate to what you did and what you want to be doing. So the algorithm is picking up more things. The description of that role, it doesn't have to be the same bullets on your resume. I like to do a quick 1 or 2 or 3 sentence paragraph. To me, that's a little easier to digest. Your resume is going to have all those bullets. So if you have a very quick paragraph, that's a great way of doing a concise and clear overview of what was that role. And again, you get to say it in your own words. So if somebody were to read 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, what are they learning about your past experiences that you want them to learn? And recommendations is another good one. If you're going to optimize your profile, I think having at least one recommendation, somebody you worked with in the past can write in their own words, what was it like to work with you? That's always good for someone who's about to hire you to see some other human in their own way wrote about you. And that's usually a really authentic thing that comes across, because when somebody worked with you, they're only going to write about their experience. So that's a powerful thing. And of course, the open to work button. We can't forget that. So if you are searching, hit open to and just fill out those preferences, job titles, hybrid or remote, location. Are you actively immediately looking or passively, and full-time, contract, part-time, all that. So fill out those preferences, because that's the most important thing to make sure people know that you're open. I could keep going, but I will pause for now.
You have thrown down like solid gold. I recommend to the listeners to go back and rewind that. You made so many points. The one really caught my attention about the description, and you nailed 3 of it. What was it? It was, oh man. Oh, no, I can't remember. We'll go back and look at that later. But you're throwing down gold. And we'll do a whole like top 5 at the end, the most important things to like absolutely have. We'll do a quick one at the end so that they can really get back into that. But let's also talk about, so I feel like in the job search, almost everyone is online. I almost said everyone, but truly like almost everyone is online. And you not just have a LinkedIn presence, you have a presence everywhere, and the internet is forever. I see a lot of job postings and information out there that will also ask for your personal website or another social media. And I just want to get your thoughts on building your brand that way. Do you have to? When you do, what does that look like? What should you have? Again, moving outside of that LinkedIn, and what else should you have online for brand building, personal brand building?
I think it depends, right? So if you're, for example, in the creative field or design or film or something where you need to showcase your portfolio of work, it could even be a software engineer has to show their portfolio on GitHub, right? So it's like, what's your path? And is there a way to showcase your work? Sometimes people do that through a website. Other people do that through, you could either do like on Canva or even on a Google Slides or PowerPoint, and you save it as a PDF. And it could be a short portfolio that's visual as a document or a website. If you're a website builder, obviously you're going to have a website, right? What can you show? If you're a designer, you're going to show your designs. Can you visually show your work? Or even if you're not in a creative field, you could have that portfolio. So say you're a marketing professional. Could you have a few slides? You don't have to have a website, but sometimes a portfolio just tells a story, right? You can show little case studies, a project, and then you can use the STAR framework, which you would use in an interview: situation, task, action, result. So you could have a slide.
Hold on, real quick. Those are like the nuggets. Repeat that one.
So situation is like where we're org name, role title. Task is like the goal or problem, that the task at hand. Action steps you took to solve it, and the results and the outcomes and the metrics. If you had a slide on your portfolio, you could tell a case study, and maybe you have 3 example projects. That could be a portfolio. Of course, you could also have a website. If you're in the business of being a social media manager or something like that, maybe you have a personal social media account that you can show. Sometimes I've seen marketers where they're so busy running marketing for other people, they don't have a personal buildup of their own. And that's okay, as long as you're showing your work however you can. Yeah, so that's portfolio, website, social media. I love a good video pitch, right? So in terms of personal branding, how easy is it? You can take your computer, do a 1-minute video of yourself, save that, upload to YouTube, and it doesn't have to be public. It can be an unlisted video if you don't want it to be across the world. And then you can link that video, if you wanted to your LinkedIn or to your resume or to a cover letter, or use that in an email if you were to go network or go try to get a job. Video is a great way of making things human. Actually, LinkedIn started where in your little headshot, you can, on my page, I have a 30-second, it's a quick video to introduce my name instead of just the headshot. But I believe it's a short, limited thing that you can do. And so why not take 60 seconds or 90 seconds and do a video pitch of yourself, get that link and use it wherever you want to introduce yourself. You can choose who to send that link to, but it's a way of making it human and showing your energy, your tone, your demeanor, your brand through the use of video. There's probably other things I'm missing, but I think branding, there's so many ways you can interpret it, right? Thought leadership. Do you want to write some blogs? Or do you want to create some videos? Some people like to get their voice and their expertise out there in certain ways, whether it's through blogs or videos. Other people may not want to do that. And that's okay. I just think if you're open to writing, blogs are so great because if you're having an interview, after that interview, you could send a blog which expands on your expertise beyond the conversation. So if you don't send a portfolio with past case studies, you could send like a blog, 10 ways I think about project management, or I'm just making it up, whatever your expertise is. Had you had time to write it thoughtfully, maybe it comes across better than you could verbally explain in an interview conversation. I would just think about the format of how can I get myself out there? Video, writing, whatever it may be, websites, portfolio. There's so many formats of what that could look like, and just figure out what feels good to you. And sometimes it's a challenge to do something you've never tried before. But these are just ways of expanding on sharing with people who you are, what you're all about, what you've done, what you can do, what you're like beyond just the resume, right? So you just want to get creative with sharing who you are in different formats. And other people may receive those formats better. So you may be more comfortable to write a blog. They may learn about you better that way than a resume too. So you just want to be open-minded and experiment with things.
Awesome. Thank you for all of that. So many great insights here. Every time you speak, I'm like, oh, there are two different ways I could take this. Where are we going to go with this? Pick your own experience kind of situation. So I've seen a lot of conversations lately about LinkedIn from recruiters talking about recent changes. I saw a debate on just today, early this morning, on the open to work, the fact that really that doesn't make a difference. I saw some HR professionals having a conversation about, did that make a difference? Someone chimed in that they've never hired anyone that hit the apply now button. So I'm just wondering from that, LinkedIn, again, we'll use that as the industry standard, LinkedIn as the tool to search for a job, apply for jobs, those little things that they allow you to do, how important that is. And then if that is not super important, what can you do to enhance it? Is it the connections? Is it asking for warm introductions? Every job out there is probably going to get thousands of applicants. So personal branding, great. You have this personal brand. What is that next step? I feel like I just threw 10 questions at you.
No, this is the right question. So when you hit open to work, you can either share that you're open with recruiters or with everyone. If you share with everyone, it automatically puts the open to work on your picture, which is a little annoying. We don't need it on our picture. I would say at a bare minimum, of course, you want to share with recruiters that you're open. I always say if you're in a time crunch, I'd rather just tell everybody. I recognize we may not really want it on our picture there, but I feel like if you're truly in that time crunch, just share with people that you're open. But at a bare minimum, share with recruiters. And that way, at least you'll come up in the searches when they're searching for talent. So that's the annoying feature. That's just how it works. But yes, you are absolutely right. Beyond the brand is important sometimes after the fact. For example, say you're networking, you're getting introductions. LinkedIn, by the way, is a great research tool. Who knows who, and my alumni network and all the ways I can find people. Sometimes once you get your foot in the door, then they're going to reference your profile or your resume or whatever it may be. So it should be clean and strong and great. But is it there's a difference between your brand being strong versus what activities do I do in my job search, right? They may search that after they've met you, after you had a phone call, or right before you had a phone call, but you've already now asked them for their time, and then they go to learn about you. So it can be that secondary step. So you're right, and you alluded to the warm introductions. Networking statistically is how people land jobs. So you do want to expand your mind, right? Who's in my network and who do they know? We often assume that we know who our people know. So family, friends, acquaintances, your neighbor, your doctor, your past colleagues, whoever it may be. I once had a chiropractor introduce me to one of her clients who worked at some major financial services company. I ended up interviewing there. you want to be able and willing to tell random people in your life where you're at and what you're looking for. Look, if you're at a social gathering or at a party, you don't need to talk about job search all day, the whole time, but get their card, get their info, and follow up later. So warm introductions, your network's network. Past colleagues, where are they at now? Who do they know? Like maybe they work at a company where another team is of interest to you. Alumni network is huge. If you attended undergrad, go find your alumni network on LinkedIn. It's such a powerful, warm connection. You can find people based on role title, company, location. There's so many ways to use it. And it's such a large network. And you have something in common. So you can say, oh, we both went to yada, yada, yada. I see you're doing whatever. I'm also in that field. I'd love to learn from you. Always make it about learning. That's something they can help you with, is answering questions. They may or may not have the job for you, but try to build a relationship, ask them questions, learn, gain knowledge, share the back and forth, and then you can see how they may be able to help you. And yeah, mutual connections. LinkedIn, I always say, is such a good research tool. So say you type in a role or something, you'll see who comes up, and then you'll say, oh, I know these people who know those people. You want to get those intros. So yes, networking is absolutely number one, but you want to make sure your brand is ready for once you make those connections.
Chicken or the egg conversation.
Yeah, I like to do the branding before the job search starts. You will always improve it periodically. But if you want to save yourself a big headache, I think people in job search take a lot of time on their materials. So what I like to do is take a week or two, just get your materials done. It's never really done, but get it strong and updated and just focus on it. And then you move into job search so you can actually focus on networking. And of course, little by little, you'll always update the materials as well.
This brings up an excellent point. I have two things. I'm going to start with one so that I'm going to say both, and we'll circle back so that I don't forget it. Don't miss it. One is, I have seen, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a consultant. Like, I consult on business. I have seen recently the use of open to work from the consulting side. And I'm wondering if you have any insight to that. And then the next thing was, I see, and now I already forgot it.
That's okay. I'll start with the first one. So yeah, I have it like I provide those, it's like services, you provide services or whatever it is, open to, that you go to the open to button and it allows you to say you provide services. Here and there, I get leads from that, but LinkedIn has their own tools and functionality for that. So a person could search for help with resume or whatever it may be. And of course, as a contractor, I can show what I do. From anecdotally, what I've learned is the folks that were grandfathered into the tool that used to be had a better edge or better success with that for some reason. I don't know how they changed their tool or the functionality of how leads get shown to consultants. I have heard that it changed from the original product. And I also heard that it's changing yet again. I'm sure LinkedIn is always changing how these things work. Personally, I have it on. I don't get like a ton of traction from it, but I think that there's folks who have. And so that's just what I've heard from like historical knowledge of the LinkedIn functionality. I don't really rely on it. I might be wrong, but I don't think there's a way for me to see who's open to and seeking those consultants, right? That would be more of the matchmaker type thing. Mm-hmm. So from my knowledge, I don't know if I'm able to do that. I just think if somebody's searching, they know and they can find me. So I leave it on, I leave it open, but for me, it's not my number one tool of how people find me. I do think I built up just my LinkedIn profile so that people connect with me, and that way I can post and whatever it is and just build my presence that way. But yeah, the open to it hasn't been my number one driver of leads, but it could work for other folks. And it's definitely worth saying that you do that and you offer that, but I haven't seen much more that you can do with it personally.
Which actually, I did remember my second question in line with that, which you had mentioned, like updating your profile and circling back. So what would you say is the recommended, or in your professional opinion, what would you recommend? Like, how often do you go update? What are the things you should focus on updating?
Yeah, great question. If you're actively in job search, I think, say you had updated your materials like fully already, give or take like a once a week check of your LinkedIn and your resume. What I like to do is keep a running list of the keywords that you notice in job postings and things like that. Because of course, these ATS systems, we want to make sure our profile is optimized with the right keywords. So keep a running list. And then once a week, you can update it. If you're not in job search, it could be once a month, it could be once a quarter, but I would make it you want to make sure you remember, right? What are your projects? What is your work? And you never know who's going to reach out to you at any point in time, even if you're already working. So I think at least once a quarter, if you are in a job, bare minimum, maybe twice a year, once a year, the thing you run the risk is you're going to just forget. So make sure you're documenting your achievements. And that way, even if you update it less often, you can at least refer back to your own personal documents of what you've done. But again, you want people to know, say you're working in a job, right? What's your impact? What's your achievements? What if you get some better job offer? People can see your work and your achievements. So you may as well represent all the good stuff you're already doing on the job. That's why I like at least the once a quarter. It's great. And in terms of what to update, I would say the headline, the about section, the past experience section, of course, recommendations. I would say once a year, you could look at another recommendation. And of course, you're open too. So say you're in job search, don't forget, go back to your settings. Maybe they let you pick 5 job titles in the open too. Are those the right 5 job titles, right? So make sure you might be learning things as you're job searching, as you're interviewing. What are the best fit roles for you? You're optimizing what am I open to and what is my profile saying about me as well. And ideally, what you're looking for and what you've done, you want to connect the two a bit as much as you can, unless you're making a big pivot, of course. But yeah, you're trying to show your relevant experience, your transferable experience. So I would always think about how am I representing my skills in line with my direction, and the settings of the role titles I'm open to is so important. Are those the right roles for you? That's a huge opportunity to make sure you're staying clear and focused on what is a sensible strategic direction of what it is you're pursuing.
Awesome. Okay, gosh, I have so many questions and we're getting tight on time here. I guess I really also wanted to think about like career. So we've talked about like looking for a career transition, having your profile so that you're getting that next job or you're keeping that in mind. But I know that from a professional standpoint, even when you're in a job, being present online, building that brand presence while you're still in a job, not only for future search, but for the benefit of company and the benefit of your company and building your brand within that company. And should you do it even? Like, I know that technically, if you're building your brand, but you are promoting the business you work in, you are technically giving them some equity in that. Is that a best practice? Yeah, really, what does that look like? Should you? I'm sure that's a personal preference, but any guardrails within that?
Yeah. And tell me if I'm answering this the way you're asking, but I'm reflecting on, as you're talking, I worked at Goldman Sachs for 3 years and I loved building my brand internally, right? You build yourself a campaign of who are you as an employee? Are you valuable? Do people know your name? I mean, they launched this internal blog site actually. And I remember I was writing things and there was one article that got 3,000 reads or clicks or views. I can't remember. The beauty is, as an employee, you may be having insights or innovative ideas or connecting the dots in a way that you should share. And so sometimes we have to get creative with what is the company culture and does it really allow me to share the things I want? But if you can show your insights, you may really have very powerful ideas about how this company is working or should work. And if your company culture is open to hearing those and empowers you to share those things, I love the idea of building that brand because that's going to help with your opportunities, getting on projects, getting tapped for things, promotions. I even was participating we have an affinity network. So we had the women's network and there were other groups like that as well. We also were able to get involved with recruiting for our alma mater. So any like opportunities where you can have cross-functional, of course, projects that are cross-functional, but also just things that aren't tied to your day-to-day. This is great for If people talk about intrapreneurialism, right? Can you innovate on the inside? If you're interested in other teams, can you shadow them? Can you build relationships? Can you get mentors at other teams? This is a great way to think about your path, right? Where do you want to go? And how can people help you get there? And that could be outside of your immediate team. So mentorship, getting involved with things, building relationships. Thought leadership. Is it a blog? How do you share your ideas? If your company allows you to suggest or propose something, that was the beauty of my time there. If you put together a one-pager and you got buy-in and you made a case for something that should be fixed and it had a business case behind it, you could run with it. To the extent you find opportunities like that, that's a great way of both tapping your own personal and professional interests and getting the support. So that's a great organic way of feeling like you're developing within a current company in the ways that you want, right? And exploring your interests, getting support for that. It's the ideal scenario. Not every company culture allows for all these things, but to the extent you can make it happen and you can go get that mentor across the other department or whatever it may be, you absolutely should, because I think we get wrapped up in this is my job, this is my expectations, but what about your own development? So take that into your own hands, find that mentor, and don't forget to make time just for feedback and growth of your own path versus just like, I'm doing the things that were asked of me, right? Represent, document your achievements and make them known. I love a good monthly update. Craft a one-pager. Here's what I did this month, or here's what I did this quarter, and share that with a few senior stakeholders. So they, that in and of itself is a rare thing that people do. And then people start to see that, first of all, they see what you're doing, but they also see that you care about your own growth and the growth of the company because you're taking the time to synthesize and reflect that. And maybe you're sharing ideas. That's going to help you get pulled up into the leadership team, right? Those are the types of people that they want alongside them and not just to manage those people. Those are the folks where you start to get a seat at the table because you're showing interest in both yourself and the company in a bigger way.
Brilliant. That was just brilliant. That was solid gold. Seriously, even the monthly update, I would not have thought of that. And that is, you're right. Gosh, that shows panache in all the different things that come with it. I am loving this conversation. So I'm going to try and wrap it up with just a couple more questions really quick. Again, hacking the patriarchy. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, and I don't really have an end goal here, but maybe your top 3 to 5. Take it from what men are doing online and do it too.
Yeah. I think being willing to share. Look, sometimes people are noticing recently that LinkedIn is becoming like a Facebook. So you don't need to share personal stuff unless you want to. But sometimes there's what's personal versus professional. You might have experienced something at work. Being raw, being vulnerable, and sharing a story like that, I think shows confidence and shows leadership, right? It helps people get to know you. And if there's a lesson in something you learned, tell us. That's going to help people along their journey. I think challenging yourself to have a regular voice, right? So you can, when something comes to you, you can share it. But if you really want to build that brand, maybe you challenge yourself once a week to come up with something valuable to say. Now, sure, you don't want to force it and just say something that isn't helpful. There's a lot of ways to be creative. Maybe you find an article that you thought was interesting that you were already reading anyway, and you share it out and you add your thoughts. Maybe you write a blog or create a video or tell that story. So give yourself a process. It's almost like we're all in marketing to some extent. Think about marketing and social media. Those folks, for example, I do have help on the marketing side. They're going to make sure I can consistently add value in a public way. You can think about it the same way for yourself. So create a process around it if that helps to make it simpler for you, but try to stay accountable to sharing. And again, you're always going to say what's going to be valuable, but get creative with there's different styles and ways of doing that. And the bottom line is we want to hear from you. We want to hear from each other. So give yourself the time and space to ask yourself, what should I share? And what do I want to share? If you notice you're falling into the confidence trap of people don't want to hear what I want to say or whatever it may be, get support and get coaching and get mentorship through that. Get another pair of eyes. Maybe you write a blog and you have somebody read it and just give you their thoughts. Remember that if you draft something and have somebody at least read it, you're still taking strides, even if it's not yet posted. So push yourself to the next step versus, oh, I didn't write anything at all. Write something and show a friend or show a colleague and just see where that gets you. And that's going to give you feedback to help you feel better about how to make that content stronger and then post it. But don't let your mind trip you up into, I'm not going to say anything at all. Just try to draft something and take those steps until you're ready to publish it out there. And also just remember that there's so much content. So I think we often worry that people are looking at our profile or judging what we wrote or whatever. Try not to judge yourself or worry so much. It's like people may or may not even see that thing. The other thing too is think about what do you want to say and who do you want to see it? Where do you want to post it? Maybe you post it in a specific group. Maybe you're like, I'm an expert in HR or whatever it is. Let me go post for those folks. So if that helps you feel better, that's one way of doing it. I think just giving yourself the credit of people may not even see this, but I want some people to do it. Err on the side of, I want to say more versus less. It's not less is more. It's actually give yourself a process where you find a reasonable amount to try to get yourself out there. You don't want to force it and feel like it doesn't have to be every day, but get yourself in the rhythm of, oh, I have some insight. I have some innovation. I have some thoughts to share. I've been working on something. What are you already working on anyway in your day-to-day job? Tell us about it, right? Because that could help. We're all solving sort of similar problems to some extent, right? So someone else in another role, another team, in another company might be thinking about those similar things. So it's just, imagine the collaboration you're having with your team internally on the job. You can have that collaboration with colleagues across companies in a public way on LinkedIn. That's all you're really doing. Imagine you're at an HR conference or whatever conference. You're just having a digital conversation the same way you would if you were in person at some event, right? Again, don't force it, but just try to challenge yourself. And you'll see once you rip the Band-Aid off, you'll see it's way more fun and comfortable than you would have thought otherwise. So just try it. Allow yourself to try it once and then see how you can go from there.
Love it. And going right into ripping off the Band-Aid, closing this out a little bit with a lightning round, top 3 things you could do today to uplevel your brand.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, all right. Look, I would say the first thing is ask yourself, do you feel clear on your brand? And if there's opportunities where you want to strengthen your clarity and reflection of who it is you are or your goals, just know that's still a productive way to work on your branding is to ask yourself, where do you want to go? Spend time to learn and reflect about your direction. It sounds like a big thing, even though we're in a lightning round, but that's still productive. Even before you get your voice out there, who are you? What are you all about? Spend time on that. The second thing I would say is just take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Like with fresh eyes, even though you were the one who wrote that stuff, if it was weeks ago or months ago, you're probably going to notice areas for improvement. All you have to actually do is represent who do you think you are today and ask yourself, is this profile representing what I want to say to the world? Who am I? What are my skills? What are my interests? What are my direction? And maybe there's some key phrases missing that you can add. So with fresh eyes, you may have those areas for opportunity that you notice right here and now. Third thing might be just get someone else's pair of eyes on it. Everyone, they'll tell you what's their perception, what's their feedback, what makes sense, what sounds good, what's confusing. Any other pair of eyes, like seriously, if there's another human reading it, of course, sure. Do you want someone qualified who's in your field? Do you want a recruiter? Do you want a coach to read it? Absolutely. But even if it's a colleague, a mentor, a peer, that's still helpful to see how does this read and come across to someone else.
I love it. Is there anything I didn't ask that you absolutely wanted to make sure the listeners knew?
You know this, Raven, but my forte is helping people clarify their direction. So the one thing I will say is if you're not fully clear yet on where it is you want to go, just know that's okay. That's normal. And there's steps and support out there to help you get there. I call it career path exploration. There are practical ways to learn and reflect and get confident on where you want to go. So just know that's feasible. I think people go through their professional life just not knowing where they want to go and feeling like they're never going to have that clarity. You can get there. And we want you to focus on advancing versus questioning where you belong in this professional world. So if you have questions on your direction, just know that you absolutely can get support, get confident in your path. And then all these other things like branding becomes so much easier because you know what you want to say, you know what you want to talk about, and you know what you want to work on.
I love it. And if people want to get that support from you, how are they going to find you? I'm going to put it in the show notes, but how do they find you?
Yes. So our website is iamwoken.com. On LinkedIn, I'm just Rachel Serwetz. You'll find me. You can email us at team@iamwoken.com. You can find me on most social medias. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all of those things, where usually our handles either Get Woken or Woken. But reach out to me. I'm here. We always offer a free initial chat if you want to chat about yourself and where you're at and hear some thoughts and recommendations from us. We're always happy to do that. And our website also has a ton of free resources. So we have downloadable guides, we have meditations, we've got blogs, we've got videos. So if you want guidance, even just for free, we have a massive career library on our site.
For the listeners, don't miss out. Head over there immediately. Rachel, it has been my greatest pleasure. This has been so insightful, so illuminating. The listeners are going to get so much out of this. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join me today.
You are so welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. For all the juicy deets on this episode, be sure to check out our show notes or give us a holler on Instagram at Hacking the Patriarchy Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support this podcast, don't be shy. Please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all. Lastly, if you'd like to lend your personal support, please take a moment to tell the world about it with a review on your favorite streaming platform. We'd be forever grateful. Tune in again soon to enjoy a brand new episode of the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. And until next time, keep on hacking, my friends. If you've made it this far, I have one more little thing to share with you. Did you know that this isn't my only feminist endeavor? That's right, there's more. I run a media startup dedicated to providing the most current and pertinent news about women, for women, and by women. Our mission centers on delivering a platform where the latest updates regarding women-led initiatives are extensively covered, highlighting women's actions, accomplishments, perspectives, and other elements that profoundly influence women's lives and contribute to meaningful progress. I invite you to head over to femled.news to learn more.